Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is our first episode of 2026. This is episode 224 of Hashtag No Limits. I am your host, Shelly Kino, and I believe that we know who we are, but not who we will be. Ophelia says that in Hamlet. I believe that to be 100% true, and that there is not a better or more beautiful example of that than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. For those who don't know, a very simplified, very quick description of how that happens. The caterpillar literally dissolves into its cells, and my gosh, it must think its life is over at that point, but it's not. It's then that it reforms into the butterfly, but it's still not finished struggling. It has to fight in order to get the strength it needs in its wings to take it everywhere it's going to go once it gets out of the cocoon. I can't imagine that that can be easy, but neither is busting through limits that society places upon people. And that is what this podcast is all about, is highlighting those who are busting through limits that others have placed upon them in their thinking processes and sometimes even in physical ways. So before I bring my guest on, just like always, we've got to do the housekeeping things. So please, if you're joining us today, give us a hashtag live and where you're watching from or listening from. If you are joining in the replay, hashtag replay and where you are watching or listening from. And if you have any comments or questions, please pop them into the chat. I will be sure to address those with my guest, or if it's something for me, I will address that. Please make sure it's relevant to the episode. I'm not going to be able to help you with any Facebook issues that you're having or YouTube issues that you're having or wherever you're listening to your podcast. So I think I have, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I tend to forget that one as well. All right. So you've heard enough from me. Let's bring on my guest today. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I am doing fabulous. So I am in sunny Southern Illinois in January. Where are you joining from?
I am in sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, where I grew up. This is my hometown, and it's all I've known my entire life.
Yeah, and you have had the privilege, though, of traveling. So you haven't
Yes.
only been in Las Vegas. So what's your temperature there today? I'm thinking we're not
Right
the same
now,
temperature.
it's saying 55 degrees, but it's sunny out.
Oh,
Yeah. So
well, that's approximately where we are.
all right. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we've had, I take that back. We're actually warmer than you. Mine now says 64.
Wow. You guys are,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah. So you should come here.
I'm gonna put a sweater on then.
Yeah. See if you can work that out with your boss.
Yes.
I know she's kind of a pain sometimes, but just so complete honesty here. Mark and I have a mutual contact. His boss, Sandy, is a relative of my husband's. It's a convoluted connection, but anyway, so I can tease Sandy, and she'll be okay with that. I'm pretty sure. So thank you, Braden.
I don't know if you're aware of this. Sandy and I grew up here in Las Vegas together.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
I was aware of that. Yeah. So. And should we name drop? Who did you go to high school with?
Oh, we went to the likes of Jimmy Kimmel. Sandy actually sat next to Jimmy in band. Louis Prima Jr., several famous musicians, jazz musician Kenny Rampton.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of actors when we graduated in 1986, there was only 10 high schools in Las Vegas, and now there's probably 35, 40. But when we graduated, so our graduating classes were very large. Ours was about 800 students, and
wow.
There was a lot of people and celebrities, kids that would go to school with us, and it was
okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
That I didn't know about all of those. I just knew about Jimmy. So
yeah.
That's impressive. So before we get into, talking about the main reason that you're on today, which is we're going to talk about your son, in a school that size and in the 80s, the special education law came out in the mid 70s. Are Are you aware that anyone in your school or in your classes were people eligible for special education?
No, I mean, in the 80s, it wasn't as tolerant, I should say, as it is today. I mean, or where you would recognize that. You just, as a student, you would just say, oh, that kid's kind of odd to yourself, or, but there wasn't anything where you actually saw, hey, this kid is going here for, special needs or something like that. We did have a special needs teacher, but it was, I don't know, for me at least, you didn't really see that much of the school. It was just who you interacted with on a daily basis. It wasn't like, if you saw somebody that was acting kind of odd, that was probably noted back then by other students, but it wasn't anything that you specifically saw and it said, hey, that kid's got autism, or that kid's got a mental delay or something along those lines. You wouldn't, that's not something that would pop up.
Yeah, same for me. I graduated in 1989, and I can remember in grade school, and I had a much, much smaller class. I had less than 100 people graduate with
Yeah.
with me, and I can remember that the special education students were sort of like you said, they were in a different part of the school.
Mm-hmm.
Ours were sort of tucked down a little hallway and in this room that wasn't much bigger than a coat closet.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't eat lunch with us. They didn't have the same lunch times as we did. They didn't have recess with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from that, and I'm curious to know if this happened for you as well, I developed an other mentality that, kids who were different were like, I don't know, somehow like they needed to be elsewhere. They couldn't be with the general population because there was something wrong with
Mm-hmm.
them. And so I'm curious if that happened with you. I mean, even the fact that you were aware you had a special needs teacher, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I would say it's similar, very similar to that. It's like you saw these kids, but you didn't know where they exactly they were going, but you didn't see them in any of your classes. But yeah, and they weren't. I mean, for me as a kid in the 80s, it wasn't like something I would gravitate towards to go and try and talk to them or anything like that. I was trying to find my own way, I guess you could say, um, which is, it's a shame back then that we couldn't be more inclusive, but I guess it brought us to today where my son went to school, it was very inclusive where the kids like understood what he was dealing with and they were encouraged to help each other out.
Yeah, and so I brought that sort of history lesson in really quickly because I wanted to show
Mm-hmm.
some progression
Yeah.
from, when you and I were growing up and going to school and to where your son is now. And it's still, we have a long way to go, I
Mm-hmm.
think, but there has been some forward movement. And so I do want to acknowledge that. And I also hope and I believe that this is happening, that as you said, now that your son was in sort of the general environment more often, that people are being more welcoming and accepting. And a lot of the people that I interact with, and the sort of reason for starting this hashtag no limits was for people more our age,
Mm-hmm.
because we did have, I think a lot of people just had that idea that it was, well, they're different and different must be bad because they're not included with us.
Right. Yeah, and I think that you hit the nail on the head there. That was the environment it was for me when we were growing up. So you don't, and then there was the bullying that went on for those
Right.
kids. I didn't interact with them, but you would see it happen in the hallways.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I know that still happens today. I'm hoping that it happens less and that we are able to catch it and
Yeah.
put a stop to it quicker because, yeah, growing up, I
Yeah,
mean, we didn't talk about bullying. It
yeah,
wasn't a,
we
I mean,
had
it was a thing.
no, yeah, we had one instance where in one of the schools we actually moved him from that school, and it was a private school that my son was going to, and he was getting bullied by this kid whose parents were huge donors to the school. So the school would not do anything really about it because they were such big donors to this particular school. So we, the following year, we just moved him to a different school.
And that's wonderful that you had the option. Unfortunately, I hear stories like that occasionally where it's a private school and because they can, they
Hmm.
don't have to accept
Right.
everybody. And so they often don't accept kids, especially kids with any kind of outward behaviors. I
Hmm.
think they have kids with behaviors, but they don't realize it because it's the child who is quiet and inattentive or not focused, but they're quiet. So
Right.
they're, you know, not causing a problem. But yeah, I've heard of a situation, and I don't think it was yours. And now that I'm like, well, is it yours that we talked about it? But where it was, I think the same sort of thing where there was a situation in the private school environment, and a child did need some extra support,
Hmm.
and some of the other families in the private school arena said,
Hmm.
why we know what the problem is. Let's just dismiss with the problem.
Yeah.
And it's sad that that's still happening in 2020s.
And for us, it was kind of a shock to the system because we were paying all this money for private school, thinking we were going to get a better education and better treatment, and that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very disappointing. And like I said, thankfully you had the ability and the capability to do that. Unfortunately, there are situations where people take them out of public school,
Hmm.
maybe for a similar situation, whether that's from a teacher even or a student, and they put them in a private school, and then the private school ends up not having the
Right.
ability or the desire to
Right.
support the student. And, so you either go back to the public school or you homeschool. Because a lot of,
Yeah.
like where I am, and when we think about our mutual friend and her family,
Hmm.
where we all live, there's not a lot of
Right.
options like that. I mean,
Right.
you're saying there was only 10 high schools when you were growing up. There aren't even 10 high schools in my entire county where I live.
Yeah.
So to have those big cities is one thing, but we've
Yeah.
got a large population out in our rural areas that
Hmm.
don't have as many options. So
Right.
thank you for sharing what it was like for you growing up and maybe where some attitudes have formed. And so now let's get to the real reason that you were going to come on and agreed to be my guest today. And let's talk
Mhm.
about your son.
Okay.
So just, you don't have to give, too specific information, but, about his age and, just let's start talking about some of his schooling.
Okay. Well, Lucas is 21 years old now. He currently is going to school at UNLV. He's studying computer science and minoring in film. And
Wow, cool.
his goal is he really loves video games like any kid, but he's been studying coding for about 10 years now, and he really wants to become a video game developer or work for a studio, and that's his big goal. When he was diagnosed when he was probably about 5 years old. He was diagnosed with pervasive development disorder and sensory processing disorder, and from a very early age, and that was his challenge growing up.
And I'm not sure that they even still have the pervasive developmental disorder diagnoses anymore. I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
now
not
all
in
been,
yeah, it's not in the DSM anymore. It
right.
was called pervasive development disorder and not otherwise specified. So it was like
Yes.
kind of a catch-all for anything outside of Asperger's or autism.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So at the age of 5, what were sort of some of the things that you were seeing? And out in Nevada, did you have the opportunity to have him in school before age 5? And were there some signs there, or what led you all to the diagnosis?
Yeah, we had him in a pre-kindergarten program prior to regular kindergarten, but when it was first brought to our attention by his kindergarten teacher, and as a parent, it's not something you're welcome to be hearing from your teacher. And we're just, we're like, there's nothing wrong with him. The what started it was his kind of speech patterns were, he was having trouble pronouncing certain words, his R's and his W's, or he'd say R's as W's, and
Sure.
so and my wife at the time and we were just thinking to ourselves, well, this is a normal kid growing up. They all have problems, talking when they're 5, and so as we were, as he got a little older, we, at home we would notice certain things that he had started developing a little bit of a stutter, and so we decided we took him to our pediatrician. Even our pediatrician said, there doesn't look like there's anything wrong, but it kept progressing. So we went to a specialist, and that's when he actually officially got diagnosed.
Okay. And so, again, I find that interesting. So you said he's 21. So, I mean, by that point, the law had been in play for quite some time. And the word autism, or, PDD, NOS, that had been out there as well for some time. And I find it interesting that your normal pediatrician was also like, no, I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary here. And yet you and your wife at the time and your teacher, you're like, nah, there is something underlying here that maybe we need to address.
Right.
And I think we still are in that situation where,
I mean, it was hard. Like for me, looking at Lucas when he was that age, he was just a normal, healthy boy. And I didn't see anything wrong. Because being around other children that age, they all talk the same. They all, had the same speech patterns, it seemed like. But then as it progressed, it just didn't seem to get any better. For lack of a better term, I don't want to say better because I don't want to seem like there's something wrong with him, because I don't believe there's anything wrong with him. But it progressed, and we decided to get some more expertise in the matter, and then we started therapy with him as well.
And we have more and more studies coming out all the time that talk about early intervention and how important that is. And like yourself, he's your firstborn, and we have,
actually, he's the secondborn.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But your firstborn had similar sort of. I mean, like you just were like, oh yeah, the first and the second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that changed my thought process, but that's okay. No, there are still a lot of parents in general, but I think a lot more first-time parents that, they're like, well, this is how kids are supposed to be at this age, because they don't have that experience of being around a lot of kids, or it's a semi-typical. I mean, interchanging R's for W's at 5, that's not all that out of the ordinary.
Right.
The stuttering, again, not all that out of ordinary. As far as when I say ordinary, I mean that the typical development realm that, we look at as educators specifically, like, oh, we think they're going to do this at this point and this between, this range and whatever. And so, I mean, he wasn't really all that far outside of those ranges. And so you maybe had sort of a wait and see approach, which that's a really tricky approach, because for some kids okay, they don't need eligibility for special education, and other kids it turns out that they do. And then you think, oh, well, if we had done something sooner, maybe the child could be even further advanced than what they are now.
Right.
So
I try not, I try not to think of it in those terms about like advance. Because he's a great kid. He's smart. He's intelligent. He does his schoolwork. He's very smart. What I love mostly about he knows his diagnosis, and he does everything he can to research himself, even to see what he can do better for himself.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
and when I mean advanced, I don't mean like advanced intellectually. I just meant further on the developmental
right.
than if we had started at 2 compared to 5 or something. Not
Sure.
I
No, I understood. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Yeah. It's not just for you, but for anybody listening.
Yeah.
Like I didn't mean it.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're all good. And that's something, honestly, Mark, that I encounter frequently when I go to IEP meetings with families is that we all use the same words because we're using the English language,
Right.
but our interpretation of that word is different sometimes, depending on the setting, the situation, the history of the person talking. And so it's actually a great lesson because communication is so very important at IEP meetings. And we always think that we're communicating, and we are, but not completely.
Right. Yeah. I get it. It's weird because as you grow up with a child with a spectrum disorder, and there's certain words that people say, like you'll hear the diagnosis, is your son typical? I'm like, well, he is typical.
Right, he's typical for Lucas.
He's a typical boy. Yeah. So there's things that I hear and I'm like, well, no, but it a lot of times it's the way somebody, the intent someone's using it, or how they're describing it. It's more probably me throwing up my guard up more than anything.
And that's okay, but I appreciate that you say that, because I do believe that, that's for anybody in any situation, again, because, I don't know what history. A lot of people call that baggage. That sounds bad. So I'm going to say history.
Yeah.
I think it sounds bad. See, that's my interpretation of the word baggage.
Yeah.
You bring your history with those words, with those, somebody's thoughts. And again, that's it's not that I said anything wrong or your thinking is wrong. It's just our different life to this point.
And as a parent of Lucas, you just have to look at someone and see the intent it was used, because there's a lot of mystery around even today with autism, these illnesses. There's a lot of, we think this may work, or we think this is what it is, but we don't exactly know. So we just have to see what the intent of the person is that's talking to you, and I don't get angry or mad at anyone. I'm like, well, that's not the case, or
yeah. And I wish that more people had that approach, because I don't think that the majority of people say things with malicious intent. Are there people? Unfortunately, yes. But I think pretty much that, I would say probably 95% of people don't have malicious intent when they use certain words or they say things in a certain way. But because of the scars that a person may have from others who have used words similar to that, or those specific words, that it is very upsetting. And, if we could just, like you said, think about the person's heart that said what they said, and calmly approach that person and say, I really don't appreciate when you say that word, because to me, it means blah, 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 versus, I can't believe you use that. How,
Exactly. It's all about the approach. It really is. It's just how someone approaches you and how if you how you push back, and it doesn't have to be nasty, you know.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. So as Lucas was going through school, so he's 5, 6 years old, getting this
Hmm.
diagnosis, getting this then eligibility, I presume, at that point for special
Right.
education.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so did you sense or were you ever actually told he will never go to college is a big one that I hear.
No, we were never told that.
Good.
But we were told you will need a lot of therapy, a lot of help to live an independent life if he ever chooses to do so, or if we wanted him to do so. So, and that's what we did. We prepared him. He's doing really well now. He's 21. He still lives with his mom, but he's if his mom travels, he's on his own. He knows how to cook his own dinners, and we're actually trying to get him to learn how to drive. And we've been giving him driving lessons. There's a place in town, expert who teaches kids on the spectrum how to drive, and it has had success. The issue we have now
That's
is,
awesome.
yeah, yeah, it's just that he doesn't want to. So
Oh, okay.
we're trying to make him want to, so we'll see. We'll see where he gets there, but he can travel around on the bus if he wants to, and he knows how to get around.
Right. And I was thinking that because you're in Las Vegas, you probably
Mhm.
have lots of public transportation options.
Mhm.
Any, and again, if you don't want to share if he has told you, but any reasons why he doesn't want to learn how to drive?
Um, I honestly don't know. I haven't really asked him. I made an assumption that it was probably a little difficult for him, as
Hmm.
he's scared. But I have to have that conversation with him and see why he doesn't want to.
Yeah, I know. I mean, a lot of kids. I know he's not a kid, but um, when I say kids, I'm thinking of my daughter who is 26, so definitely not a kid. But I just know from even when she was in high school, and in Illinois, we have driver's ed in the high schools, and
Yeah.
even when she took it, I mean, there were her and a lot of people in her class were in no hurry to
Right.
get that driver's license because they were almost always in contact with each other without having to have a driver's license.
It's funny because I was going to bring that up as well. My daughter, who does drive, my daughter did not want to get a driver's license either. And
Yeah.
and when I was, at the time in Nevada, that when I got my license, the driving age was 16. It's 18 now. I could not
Oh,
wait to get behind the wheel of a car. I just assumed that the kids these days, that they don't really. I know my daughter just didn't want to. Finally, she got one, and she drives now, but she wasn't really interested. I think
yeah.
it's a
That's
generational thing.
well, yeah, and I do. I think a lot of it had to do, or my daughter, at least, like I said, is well, first we lived in a very small town. Everybody was almost literally at an arm's length away, but
Mhm.
then, definitely because she had her cell phone and
Mhm.
all the social media stuff. She and her friends were literally at each other's fingertips all the time.
Yeah,
I did not know though that Las Vegas driving age was 18, and I actually appreciate that because with
yeah.
the number of people that are in Las Vegas,
Mhm.
the amount of instantaneous decisions that have to be made while you're driving
Yeah.
is quite a bit. And I mean, what I know about how the brain develops and executive functioning skills, I I think I'm sure the 16-year-olds don't like it, but I
Yeah, it's
um
it's there's a lot of traffic here now, especially with all we have so many people moving here on a daily basis, and it's gotten crazy since I was a
yeah,
kid. Since I learned
right.
to drive, I in this today's environment here, if learning to drive, I would think would have been a lot harder for me.
Yeah. I have family in Chicago and I worry about when their kids learn to drive. And I'm like,
And I
oh,
think it was when I graduated high school, I think there was about 800,000 people living here in Las Vegas, and now there's almost 3 million.
Wow.
So, yeah. So,
Yeah. That's incredible.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So now, we've got him, he's in special education. What sort of, I mean, you said there really weren't a lot of limits that you were aware of, or any, placed
Hmm.
upon him. So what was that experience like for him and for you? Was it well, I'll leave it at that and let you go on, and I might ask you a couple more things.
It was good. It progressed really well throughout his childhood with the IEPs he had. He had some good teachers, and then we had him in occupational therapy outside of that, and we could really see him progressing. And him, what was really nice for me to watch is him understanding his own condition and what he needed to do. So, for instance, I'll give you one for instance, and I was really proud of him. I'm always proud of him, but I would go into his room and he'd be studying, and on his computer would be a YouTube video of music for kids on the spectrum or something like that he would be listening to, because he researched, he's like, this might be able to help me. So
Well, that's
little
cool.
things like that, just really, and anyone, I don't know, well, I can tell you from my experience, that kids on the spectrum will really surprise you on what they're capable of. And he has exceeded that. Every time I talk to, he'll tell me something like, wow, it just blows my mind what he thinks about, and how his brain works. It's fascinating. I have a journal I keep of just most of it's really funny things that he said growing up, little comments and things, and just the way his brain works. It's amazing. Like,
Yeah, I was.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to share one really funny thing. This to me kind of would just encapsulates how is it just the funny things he says. I was telling him one time when I was in college, I got my ear pierced, kid, and he looked over at me and he goes, "Really, Daddy? You went to college?" And it just floored me. Just
Yeah.
the funny things he says. So I have a whole journal of things like that he would say. It just cracked me up, and some of it's funny, but it's very smart in the way he would do it.
Yeah, I wished I would have written down the one that you told me the first time that I met you, because it was hilarious, but it was also like,
Yeah,
well, I
you're
mean,
like,
it's true.
yeah. I wish I could remember what it was too, but I have hundreds of those. It's just so funny, you know.
And many times in my experience, kids with autism are very literal.
Yes.
And so because of them being so literal, they have said some things, or their families have told me that they've said some things, and it's like, well, yeah, that's true, but either we don't usually say that out loud because it's
Uh,
maybe not, the nicest thing to say in that
yeah.
moment, or we don't think about it as
Yeah.
actual literal truth.
Oh gosh, you just made me think of another one. My mother was talking to him one time, and my mother had a birthday, and she asked Lucas, "Lucas, I just turned 65. What do you think?" And he looks up at her, and he goes, "Well, you could look a little younger." Just
Yes.
very literal. I have to be careful when I choosing the words I talk to him sometimes. Like, if I say, something along the lines of, we have to go somewhere and we have to be there in 15, or no, if I'm going to pick him up, I'll say I'll be there in 15 minutes. and it happens to be 17 minutes, I'll get called out on it. So
Yes.
I just have to say, I'll be there in just a little while, or I'll give them a range,
Yes.
15 to 25 minutes, or,
Right. And
because if
I'm
it's
so glad
not,
you brought up
yeah,
I'm so glad you brought up an example like that
yeah,
because we as educators, and I think even I'm sure, parents do this, and I bet when he called you out on it, you probably didn't chuckle about it. There may have been a few times at first where you're like, and you got
mm-hmm,
upset about it.
mm-hmm,
But because of that literalness,
mm-hmm,
and it's a very, you said you were going to do it, you need to do it. And they're not being malicious
mm-hmm,
or intentionally snarky or smartassy or whatever word you want to use.
right,
Um, it's just like that was the fact. You
mm-hmm,
said this, and then that didn't happen. And so they're like, well, you said this. And I've seen that happen, and students get in trouble
mm-hmm.
because teachers take it as the student being disrespectful.
Oh, yeah, going a little even further than that, I joking around with them. I have to be very careful if I'm joking around with Lucas and what I say, because if it's something like where it's kind of, I'll throw something out there that's kind of not insulting him, but just kind of playfully, joking
Mhm.
about something. He doesn't take any kindly to that at all. And I don't know exactly what I said to him this one time, but he pulled up an article on his phone about autistic kids not getting jokes or something along those lines. And I was like, oh, okay, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's
he doesn't process sometimes when it's a joke and when it's not. You know.
right. Because so much of our English language, I don't know
Hmm.
about how this applies to other languages, but the English language, 93% of what we communicate is the tone of voice, the inflection, the cadence,
Hmm.
and only 7% then are the actual words that are spoken. And so a lot of kids who are so literal and adults, they don't just suddenly flip a switch when they become an adult. So people with autism or other literal types of understanding don't understand the joke because it's in the nuance of how it was said, the context of where it was said, and all the things outside of the actual words.
Yeah. Hmm.
And again, that's something that I have seen play out
Hmm.
often.
Yeah.
And it's tough. I mean, I don't want to use Sheldon as the perfect example of what somebody with autism is like, but I mean, there are definitely parts of Sheldon, the character on The Big Bang Theory, that
Oh
have
yeah.
some truth in them.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny you say that. As growing up with Lucas, I interacting with other people and just in society in general, I would look at someone now and not trying to be insulting or anything, but I'm like, that person probably is on the spectrum a little bit. I can,
Yeah,
and not trying to be insulting or anything like that. I'm like, you can just I can sense things now from certain people with the way they interact, you know.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and I oftentimes people will think because I am a special education teacher or special education coach now that I know all the diagnostic parts, and I will see certain traits, but I have a very hard time saying, oh yeah, that child has whatever, or that adult probably has. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, they got some tendencies,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, because it is. There's testing for that, and just like I don't diagnose anybody with a medical condition. I'm not gonna, and that's kind of my, I guess that's my baggage. That's my
Hmm.
history. Is
Hmm.
that I don't want to do that, and I think that stems for me from what you just said that you're not trying to offend anybody,
Hmm.
and you are talking about how wonderful your son is.
Hmm.
and how, and yet you're still worried that if you say to somebody that they might have autism, that it's going to offend them.
Right, right. Yeah,
And, so
there's a stigma in society along those lines, this,
yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with it. You know, I, people have always asked me, that, you know, you know, well, I should say that growing up, people are like, well, will Lucas get better? I'm like, he doesn't need to get better. He's Lucas.
right.
I don't want him to change any, I just want him to be able to live his life because
Yeah.
he's so smart and so, gets good grades in school. He's a sweet boy, very kind. So what would I want to change about him,
Yeah. Right. And maybe and again, I don't know that people are thinking, well, they are thinking negatively, but like when they say, will he get better? I think it's they're thinking, will he become more typical?
Right, right. And that's going back to what we were talking about earlier with, the language we use.
Yeah.
Right. Because there are kids that, I don't have experience with nonverbal, I can't imagine the parent that has the nonverbal child and what they must have to deal with on a daily basis. So, and in terms of how they raise their children and the education they get and how other people treat them. So,
Yeah. And for years, if people said something about you're not normal, I'm like, I don't want to be normal. I
right.
don't I don't want to be like the majority. I
Yeah.
like to be how I am.
Mm.
And
Right.
now growing up, I didn't like that if somebody said that to me. It was hurtful. But
Right.
now I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I would prefer not to be normal.
Right.
Because really what is normal?
Hmm.
It's just okay, well there's a lot of people that fall into this bucket and it's more than what fall into this bucket. So this is normal, this is abnormal.
Right.
Why did we determine that?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, you know, who's to say we're not abnormal? you know,
Right?
you know.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I have been around you a few times, and
You're not the first person that's told me that.
well, like I said, people tell me I'm not normal, so I think people who aren't normal can be fun, are fun. I
Mhm.
mean, I've laughed every time I've been in your presence, so I think that's a good sign, honestly. Um, so yeah, so okay, so now we've kind of gone through grade school and high school.
Mhm.
One of the things that is difficult for a lot of families is their child's social life.
Mhm.
Like you keep mentioning, how good his grades are. He's a kind boy, man. Um, but how do you feel about his social interactions and his friendships and that sort of thing?
He's only got one or two close friendships. That's not to say though that he doesn't interact with people like in school and everything. He has
Mhm.
friends at school, but in terms of close friends, he only has two, and that is something I, me and my ex-wife work on with him to and try to get him into groups and better, um, with more friends. So a couple of things that we have done, there's two programs here locally. One of them he doesn't do anymore. It was called Sports Social, which is a center here a nonprofit center that takes in kids of all diagnoses and creates social skills. They develop social skills through sports with them. So they have like
Nice.
basketball. Yeah. So they put them in little groups. And when Lucas stopped going, they hired him to work there. So he worked there for a little bit. He doesn't do that anymore. Now he's going to, we just started this place here in town. It's called Inclusion Fusion. And it's specifically for social skills. And so he had an interview. They match him up with a group that he thinks he'll fit with, and it's
Hmm.
a social skills class once a week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a cool. And you said you started it or it just started there?
It's been here. We just started taking him.
Okay.
In fact,
Okay.
Saturday night they have a trivia night. We're going to bring him to, so it should be fun.
Nice.
And he
And
loves stuff like
when we talk about friendships,
that.
I honestly don't have, I mean, like my best friend is my husband. And then, my other two very close friends are my mom and my daughter. And so,
Right. Yeah.
and then I have like my best friend that I've had since I was 10 years old. I have two actually, that we've all been friends, but it's not like we see each other and we
Right.
do stuff, and so I almost, and again, maybe I'm not in that normal bucket,
Right.
but I don't know a lot of people who have big groups that
Right.
they are friends with. It's like, oh yeah, I'm close with this one or two or this, it just seems like the ones that I know that do have four or five are fewer
Yeah.
than the ones who only have one or two.
It's like the difference between a friend and a Facebook friend.
Yeah.
Like you have all these people that you're friends with on Facebook, and you're like, oh, I knew that person 30 years ago in college, and we were friends, or I've ridden bikes with that guy a few times, and if you saw him again, you'd say hi, but you're not interacting on a regular basis with them. So that, I guess you could say that is a little bit how Lucas is with his friends. He does have 2 or 3 good friends, and then the people he chats with at school and work.
Yeah. I think maybe we need to, change society. I mean, because we see shows like Friends where there's 6 people, and I've stopped watching mainstream television years ago, so I don't know what shows are on now that would be relevant to that. But I think, we're like, oh, that's so cool. I don't have 6 friends. I'm not popular. I'm no good because I only have,
Right.
and as parents, I often hear that that's such a big worry. Like I said, is that social piece of it. And again, maybe it's just because of who I am, but I'm just like, I don't necessarily like, be friendly, be kind, talk to people. But yeah, having to have 6, 8, 10, 12 close friends.
Yeah. And I think
And I,
the program like that we have is more about that, is being able to just chat with people and maybe develop a friendship, but it's more about just interactions in daily life type of thing. And if you see something, maybe you do want to be friends with them, and you'll be able to have this dialogue that you can use between you.
right. Yeah. I definitely just, I just think we put too much emphasis. And I think that's especially in today's world where people aren't interacting with each other face to face.
Right.
I think it's more difficult to have that feeling of that connection because it is just through a screen a lot.
Right.
But yeah, what you said about Facebook, because I'm in a rural area, a lot of my Facebook friends I will run into. And if they're not people that I interact with in person on a daily basis, I'll say, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And then I'm like, "Oh, okay, I know that person." And
Right.
I know that person, but I don't know that person's name, or
Exactly.
they'll wave or smile, and I know that they're going through the same process.
Yeah.
Because it's like, "Oh yeah, we're connected."
Right.
But we call them Facebook friends.
Right.
It's not connections, it's friends. It's like, no, you're just connected.
Yeah.
So we've got Kelsey joining us. Hi, Kelsey. Glad to have you here. Thanks for sending in that message. I'm doing well. Mark, I'll let you answer for yourself. So he's at UNLV,
Yes.
living with his mom and studying to be a game maker.
Yeah, game designer. Yeah.
Game designer. And I mean, life seems pretty good for him, right?
I think hopefully it is good for him. I believe it is, and we're trying. Me and my ex-wife are very good friends, and we're both on the same page with what we want, for Lucas, and you know, we just want him to, flourish basically, and trying to give him all the tools, and all of the things we do for him aren't mine and my ex-wife's decision. He's involved in the decision making process. Like this program, Inclusion Fusion, I was just speaking with. We explained to him what it was, and we brought him there for the interview so he could ask questions also. And he's like, "Yeah, I want to do this." So there are things like that, and then he may come up to us with something that he would like to do, and that we discuss and try, and if it's something that he would really like, would absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Mhm,
fantastic, and I love that, and
mhm,
I so appreciate how you are parenting,
mhm,
because when you are raising a child who isn't fitting into the box of normal,
mhm,
it does make it more difficult, and divorce is difficult as it is with anybody, but yeah, then you throw in the added layer of a child who um, wasn't, or the world isn't designed for the
mhm.
child.
Right.
And then so the fact that you guys can maintain friendships and you're cordial and you are on the same page with all of that is fantastic, because I think that just makes what I just think that makes his life that much better.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it was something I think both of us were really concerned about when we divorced it, in terms of, because fighting over kids is not in their best interests at all. And
right.
growing up, because we've been with Lucas in different autism programs throughout his childhood, and I've seen it with other parents that had broke up and what it does to their autistic child, and it's really bad. It really
Yeah.
doesn't serve them at all.
Yeah.
It's
Abs-
sad. It really is to watch that, because the child then suffers even more than if it has isn't
yeah.
already. Mhm.
Right. Absolutely. And, divorce is between the adults, but they forget that when there are children involved, that it affects them. And, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes along with that um, we inadvertently put onto the child or children.
Right.
And yeah, so being able to get along and just saying, okay, we can't live in the same house, maybe we don't love each other anymore, but um, we can at least be cordial to one another,
Right.
for the sake of our child. So, and that's, I just, there's a whole lot of stuff that we could get into about that, but that is definitely not why you
Yeah.
came on today.
Right.
So
Right.
we only have about 5 or 6 more minutes before wrapping up. And so I know that you are very proud of Lucas, and I know you've bragged on him a bit in this episode, but I want to give you opportunity. If you have encouraging words or more bragging to do,
Mhm.
I want to give you the opportunity to just kind of carte blanche, say what you want to say at this point.
Um, well, to anyone that has a child on the spectrum, your child is beautiful. There's so much, uh, potential that you may not necessarily see, but it is there. And just do what you can to bring that out of them with kindness and love, and it will return on you. It's just a beautiful thing to watch. And I think I said early in the podcast, he surprises me every day. Your child will surprise you every day, with something that you may not necessarily have thought of, or they might teach you something that you had no idea about, which happens a lot with Lucas and me. He'll learn something in school, and he retains all this information, and it's just fascinating to watch. So, um, if you have a child, if you've just found out they're diagnosed, it's not I hope it's not the end of the world. It's actually the beginning of a beautiful, different world, and it's beautiful.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
That was very well put.
Yeah.
And thank you for
Thank
saying
you.
that, especially to people who could just be getting that diagnosis for a child in their family, and it is. I
Yeah.
mean, you mentioned that earlier on that you that was completely not on your radar when that word was suggested to you,
Mhm.
when that eligibility, that's that diagnosis, and you're like, well, no, everything like, yeah, it's. I've not had that I experience. I understand though that it can be very traumatizing. It can be,
Yeah.
I've had parents tell me that it's like a death because you had in your head, whether you intended to do it or not, these thoughts of what your child's life would look like, and
Right.
those thoughts have been tainted or they're completely gone now because of this eligibility and or this diagnosis and who your child actually is compared to who you thought they might be.
The bottom line is you take care of your children, right? Whether it's how you take care of them. If you've had a typical child, you have it in your head, I'm going to take care of them this way. Well, now you have a diagnosis. Well, now just have to take care of them maybe a different way. And that's all.
Right.
It's the change in your mindset has to be. It's not that their life is over, your life is over. It's you just have to do different things now, and not parent the exact same way you had it in your brain.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
you need to get them the tools and the help that they need to thrive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, I have very much enjoyed our conversation, and we did just have Fran hop on and say hi. So, hi, Fran. Thanks for
Hi,
joining.
Fran.
And I just, again, Mark, I appreciate you being willing to come on and share Lucas's journey and all the great things that he is doing. It's obvious that you are so proud of him
Oh,
and that you so love him exactly the way he is.
mhm.
And I think that's the best we can ask for from any parent
Yeah.
is to just love their child exactly where they are and exactly as they are and not try to push them one way or another. Guide them in the way to go, as the
Yeah.
Bible says, guide them in the way to go.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, and so I appreciate. I know you were hesitant, so I hope this wasn't painful for you.
No problem.
Um,
Well,
I'm
Shelly,
glad that
I
you.
got to thank you for doing this as well, and thank you for having me on. I mean, I love what you're doing here, and I hope more parents are able to get something from this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And thank you to our audience members today who joined us. This is hashtag no limits. I try to be on every week. Sometimes I'm running out of guests. So if you know someone or you are someone who has a story and they would be willing to share it on here, I think Mark would say that it's not painful. And I think all of my guests have said that. And so I appreciate all of you for joining, and I just want to remind you that you know who you are, but not who you will be, and tomorrow will be a better day. Have a great week, everybody. Bye bye.
Take care.